How you do, folks? So last night I played Ape Escape for the live stream, so I figured it was time to do a remake roadmap for the series, especially considering that if there is any game in Sony's catalog that is due for a remake, I would definitely say it is Ape Escape. So let's talk about what they need to do in order to make it a worthwhile experience. So, starting out with the story of Ape Escape, to be honest, I don't really think that there's much that they need to change in this regard. The setup for Ape Escape is just perfect for what the game sets out to do. The premise itself is wonderfully wacky. The premise of intelligent, evil monkeys traveling through time in order to change history and make it so they're the dominant species on Earth is a fun concept no matter how you look at it. So, yeah, I wouldn't change that. And the time travel aspect is also in service of the gameplay, too, considering all the variety that can come from it. So, the only thing I would really recommend them do is try to add a little more character to it. And I'm not asking for much, just to, give the characters a little more personality than what they have in the base game. Spike, for instance, outside the opening cutscene, he doesn't really speak a whole lot. So I think trying to build that character up a little bit would be in the game's best interest. Maybe portray him as, your typical kids anime protagonist. Having a good heart, being talented at certain things. In this case, like Spike has mad physicality, but also play up the fact that he's also sort of a dunce when it comes to intelligence. I feel like there's a fun character that you could build from that. Some more interaction with Spectre would be nice too. Yeah, you just need to build up the characterization a little bit, and even then, the character that's in Ape Escape as is not that big of a detriment. The plot's fine, not a whole lot they need to do there. Now, obviously, you aren't going to want to leave the graphics as is because the presentation in Ape Escape actually hasn't held up too badly. But considering that we are talking about a PlayStation 2 game that is pushing 25 years of age, it is time to redo the graphics a little bit just to bring them up to modern standards. However, it's something you need to do very carefully. I talked a little bit about this when I was playing the game last night, but I wouldn't recommend redoing the graphics to be more in line with Ape Escape 2 or Ape Escape 3. What I like about the original Ape Escape is just really how sharp and colorful everything is. You kind of get the sense that the graphics were sort of done with the PlayStation's hardware in mind, which is probably why everything looks so good. But when they moved the series to the PlayStation 2, it kind of feels like they lost sight of that art direction. The colors weren't anywhere near as vibrant, and it got a little too goofy for its own good with soft character models and everything. So if they were to redo Ape Escape for a modern audience, I would try to keep that angular style as much as possible and just keep the sharpness, make the colors very bright and vibrant, maybe some harsh shadows in there for the darker segments of the game. Just keep that graphic design in mind. As for the music itself, I also feel like it needs to be done. While I wouldn't redone, I wouldn't say that the soundtrack in Ape Escape is necessarily bad. I would say that it's not quite as good as it could be. Like, there's some tracks that are good, there's some tracks that are bad, and in general, I would just say the soundtrack in Ape Escape is forgettable. So, you know, having someone come in and try to capture the vibe of Ape Escape while also making for a more memorable soundtrack, I feel like that would be in the game's best interest. And then we have the voice acting. So the voice acting in Ape Escape is generally considered to be bad, but to be honest, I don't think it's that bad. It's nowhere near as bad as the voice acting in Mega Man 8 or the original Resident Evil. But it definitely isn't up to modern standards, and later games in the series would actually be noteworthy for having voice actors from the Pokemon anime. In Ape Escape 2, for instance, the two main characters shared voice actors with Ash and Misty, and it was kind of hard to shake that. However, for the style that Ape Escape is going for, I feel like they are onto something with that. So I would go for that old school kids anime style, something like Beyblade or the original Pokemon, something along those lines. I feel like that would fit perfectly with the vibe. Just, get that vibe across, but also keep in mind that you gotta make sure it's not annoying either. It's kind of like how with the recent Silent Hill 2 remake, they sort of captured that oddball vibe that the poor voice acting in the original game had, with it coming off as intentional, whereas it was probably a happy accident in that case. So that's something else to keep in mind when you're doing the graphics, the presentation, sound design in Ape Escape. Now for the gameplay. So in regards to the gameplay, structurally speaking, I think Ape Escape is perfectly fine. There is absolutely no reason that this game should go open world. Please do not do that, Sony. Not every game needs to be open world, for crying out loud. The level structure is fine. The different time periods serving as levels, that's fine. Having to collect a certain amount of monkeys in order to progress to the next level, that is fine too. There isn't much you need to change with the structure. It is fine. Leave it alone. However, I think the big question with Ape Escape is what I would do with the controls. And that's a tough one. If you guys watch a stream, I'm not terribly fond of the controls in Ape Escape. While they are good for the experience at times, like swinging how you flick the analog stick, serving how you flick your net or a stun baton, that's actually a good system. I think that's good, but for a lot of other items, it just kind of comes off as gimmicky, having to pull back on the stick to fire the slingshot or having to spin the stick for the helicopter baton or the hula hoop. That just feels clunky and super unresponsive. So my first instinct is to just say, forget all that nonsense and just have a traditional control scheme. But the more I think about it, if you were to do that, would it still be Ape Escape? Because the controls are just such a fundamental part of the experience. So my thought is to have two things done to the gameplay here. First of all, I would give players the option whether or not they want to use a traditional control scheme or have the traditional Ape Escape style. But I also think that would be the easy way out. So what I would actually recommend for an Ape Escape remake is actually completely redesign the game, not necessarily to have a more traditional control scheme, but actually take the camera control off the table completely. So what I'm thinking is something along the lines of Super Mario World, not Super Mario 3D games. Those games show that with careful design and all that stuff, you can get away with not having camera controls just as long as everything in the game is designed around that. And I think for Ape Escape, that would actually be a really good idea, because the biggest issue I have with Ape Escape is that the camera can be very uncooperative at times. And it all comes from the fact that you have the second analog stick, and instead of using it to adjust the camera on the fly like you can in a modern game, you're instead using it to do all this weird and funky stuff with your gadgets and stuff like that. So if you take camera controls off the table, you're freeing the analog stick up to be used in whatever manner you want. I feel like that would be the best way to do it, and I feel like a lot of the level design in Ape Escape could be easily redone to accommodate that, and they could probably have fun with a lot of the angles too. It would definitely take a lot of work, but God forbid you try hard to make a really good game. So yeah, I think that would be the best bet if you were to remake Ape Escape. Just adopt the camera system from the Mario 3D games or Kirby's Forgotten World, or even something like Crash Bandicoot with, just using fixed camera angles in conjunction with the platforming. Just, remove the camera controls altogether. I feel like that would be the smartest thing to do. As for the difficulty, I think the difficulty in Ape Escape is just right. It's just the right amount of hard, right amount of easy. It's not a pain in the butt to play at all. The only thing I would say is maybe with later sections of the game, some of the enemy design can be a little frustrating and at times feels like they weren't designed with how Spike moves. Since you would have to redo the camera system, you probably have to redo the enemy behavior as well, so that's something else to look at. Something else... Actually, I can't really think of anything else difficulty-wise that I would change. Maybe some new boss fights in there, but actually that's getting into content, so let's just move into that. Ape Escape these days goes for about $40 to $50, which even now is still a good price for the game. There's plenty of content to justify that price, but knowing Sony, they probably charge $70 for this game. So if you want to, have gamers be okay with that, you definitely need to add some new content in there, and that would actually be very easy to do with Ape Escape. All you would really have to do is just find some new time periods that weren't used in the original game, and then just build some new levels around there, and I feel like they would fit in there rather easily. Throwing in some new boss fights would also be wise. I did like the idea of Spectre having like these lieutenants in the 2 sequels. To have that incorporated into the first game would be a really cool idea. Maybe do some more stuff with Jake as well. That I feel like his presence was really underutilized in the original game. And maybe have some extra playable characters as well. That's something Ape Escape 3 introduced, but they didn't really do a whole lot with that either. There's plenty of ways you can extend the content with Ape Escape. You just gotta be willing and creative enough to do it. But yeah, I feel like there is a tremendous amount of potential for a remake, or remaster, or reboot of Ape Escape. And I feel like it would be in Sony's best interest to make it, because their recent output has been very consistent stylistically speaking. It's starting to get a little stale overall. And I feel like the quirky, old school anime vibe that Ape Escape brings to the table would be a breath of fresh air. I feel like it would be successful if Sony were to put their marketing might behind it. But anyway, that's it for this installment of Remake Roadmap, guys. But I would be curious to hear what you guys think. If you were given the reins for a remake of Ape Escape, how would you guys handle it? Or what did you think of any of my suggestions? Leave it in the comments. Please be civil. I'll see you guys next time.